am JoAnna Arnold, and I am from Chattahoochee-Flint Regional Educational Service Agency, RESA, in South Georgia. And it's my privilege to be here today. Most days I travel rural roads in Georgia. I work with a team of exceptionally talented educators, and we support instruction and celebrate student growth. But my job today allows me to do what I love most, talk and share stories. And we have heard some amazing stories today. Well, now each time that I travel to Washington, D.C., I remember the story that my mother told me when she was a teenager. She got locked in Arlington Cemetery. She was traveling here. She was here with a cousin, and they made their way to the gate. The gates were closed, and they had to go all the way back to the tomb of the unknown soldier to ask for help. But they didn't get help because they had to wait for the changing of the guards before they could receive any help. So if you were ever curious, if the guards truly do maintain their post after hours, well, of course they do. But today, I return to Washington, D.C. to celebrate with you service in all of its forms. And we are surrounded by incredible energy today and expertise. But I'm again reminded why this work matters. And I want to thank Congressman Baird and Julie and your team for making for making this space to highlight how languages, literacy across disciplines, and service across age groups merge and they elevate student engagement. You are appreciated. So as a literacy specialist, I work with educators of all levels, kindergarten through post-secondary, but also across many disciplines. And also, I coach. So if I'm coaching an educator, I must listen first. And isn't that what we tell people about service? That before we can effectively help someone, that we have to listen and learn what's needed, not charge ahead with what we perceive as help. So my goal is to help children learn to read. But my goal is to help children learn to read in any language. But my passion is to teach them to serve others, no matter what language they speak. So throughout my research on literacy and teacher identity, I've begun to understand something that is deeply important to me, that we must continue to shift from deficit-based thinking to asset-based thinking. Our students, even those who are struggling to read, and no matter their age, they're full of experiences, culture, language, knowledge. It's our job to honor that prior knowledge and provide these children with access to meaningful opportunities to create and connect, retain information. And at RESA, we have had the pleasure of working with the true champion of reading, Malcolm Mitchell. I don't know if you've heard of him. He is the founder and CEO of Share the Magic Foundation. He's author and a former professional football player, but his story is so inspirational. In fact, he shifted my understanding of what it means to provide kids with access to success. He exemplifies how literacy lives across domains of reading and writing and listening and speaking. But also, we're incorporating a broader range of skills. We had a Ready, Set, Reading rally with him. Over 1,000 third graders came together across 16 districts to celebrate reading. Well, yes, reading is magical, but learning to read is not a natural process. It involves years of explicit instruction. Young students are learning to map symbols to sounds and build fluency. So we like to say that kids in K-3, they're learning to read, but after third grade, they're reading to learn. So literacy depends on language acquisition. And in contrast to literacy, language acquisition is a natural process, and it begins developing at birth. Literacy expert Dr. Marianne Wolf says that developing oral language begins in the crook of the arm. And evidence-based research shows us that young brains are wired for language. One of my favorite quotes is from James Britton, and it says that reading and writing float on a sea of talk. And positioned at the heart of talking, lucky for me, is oral storytelling. Storytelling is so rich in a variety of vocabulary. So before children can read stories about service, they need to hear our stories. So I ask, who's telling the stories? Which stories are being heard? Who is listening? Well, I know that Georgia's students, the children of Georgia, they're listening. And as we celebrate 250 years, students across the United States, our nation's children, they're listening. And when students are listening and they are learning and they are talking and sharing their stories, they're building a formidable foundation needed to become confident writers. I recently visited a first grade classroom celebrating a student writing showcase, and one student wrote a story about his mom, and this is the person he chose as his servant leader. He wrote it in English, but he spoke to me in Spanish. Oh, he was so excited. He was describing her and why he chose her. He wanted to prove his choice to me. And he grinned and he laughed as he walked to the front of the room to receive his honorable mention certificate. Now, his laughter sounded like the letter M. And C.S. Lewis warns writers about emotional labeling. So I think you need to laugh just for a second with the letter M. You can do it. There you go. To understand how he felt. Now, that moment reminded me of Sandra Cisneros, the author who wrote a poem, Abuelito Who, because she describes a grandfather who laughs like the letter K. And since reading that poem, beautiful poem, that's shifted my understanding of laughter. You know, I notice it differently. Some people laugh like they have a letter H or a B, like big booming, full sound. And my daughters, I catch them, the letter P, as some of my lame jokes. But this student's joy was evident. His laughter showed his joy, and he was proud of his writing. He was proud of his ideas, his words about kindness and honesty and respect. His voice mattered, and that joy and energy, those things are contagious. And so that same energy is existing across the 3 schools that I'm highlighting today. Macon County Elementary School, the student M, that's his school. Furlough Charter School in Sumter County, and Dooley County High School. They are creating local service museums that remind us to reflect on the qualities of servant leadership. So let's begin with Macon County Elementary. Very quickly, I want to tell you that educator Shaquina Moore and the principal, Dr. George McElroy, they asked me to work with the teachers to develop a K-2 writing project, and I knew exactly how to frame that, so we began. So teachers are merging the disciplines, social studies, ELA, and the kids were writing. Dr. Oglesby is one of the teachers, and she said, let's name it Follow the Leader. So the name of their service museum is now Follow the Leader. And students identified, we read over 200 stories, and what I read, is that they've identified 4 important descriptors of servant leadership. In the words of kindergarten, first, and second graders, they want to talk about people who are kind, helpful, honest, and brave. Now, in this moment, I have to imagine my mother at the front of the cemetery and having to make her way at dusk and dark back through the cemetery. But I asked the kids. I said, well, what do you think brave means? And one child said, well, my teacher says it means doing hard things even if you're scared. And I asked, like starting to write on a blank piece of paper? Yes, because what writer doesn't fear a blank page? But this is literacy work, building critical thinking, metacognitive flexibility at an early stage, because they're not just learning to read or write, they're learning to see themselves through a lens of purpose and possibility. The second example is Furlough Charter School in Sumter County. At Furlough, the students are taking their service learning banners on the road. They're here behind us. They're enlarging their public museum experience. Students have collaborated with community partners, the local library system, Phoebe Sumter Medical Center, the National Park Service, Rotary, and Chattahoochee-Flint RESA, of course. In fact, their banners have spent so much time on the road that Senior Wiley Stewart completed his Eagle Scout project for Furlough's student body, and he and his teacher, Laura Collins, replicated these banners for an outside walking museum for the students. It lives at the school in their Peace Garden, and their Peace Garden is named Heart Songs for Maddie J.T. Stepanek. Our third example is Dooley County High School, where educator Kylie Gerard and student council president Caleb Green, along with other high school students, have created their Museum of Service to honor dedication, humility, and leadership. Their first recognition was Sheriff Van Peavy, who lived a life of quiet and steady service. So the students studied his life, not just to learn history, but to understand what it means to live a life of purpose. And what's meaningful across all of these schools is that literacy work and service learning have become recursive, a powerful cycle in which students read and write, reflect, connect, and act. And across Georgia, something remarkable is happening. We have two more schools are adding service museums in the fall. Students are moving from individual voice to collective impact. They're learning about leadership, and now they're practicing it. They're moving from reading stories to becoming part of one today. They're building agency and the confidence, the efficacy to become the very servant leaders that they study. So I'll leave you with this. If literacy is the foundation and service is the application, what is our role? Our role today is to connect learning to purpose, to unify America through a shared value of service, to choose asset-based hope over deficit-based fears, to guard the future of our children, like that guard at Arlington Cemetery. My call to action to you, if I had the magic wand, is to be intentional. I want you to do something magical. I want you to visit the schools. I want you to go read to the children. I want you to go tell them your stories. Because when we do that, we don't just teach students to read the world. We empower them to seek what is inherently good about our nation. And we inspire them to carry that goodness forward another 250 years and beyond. Thank you.